Twisted Colossus is the most polarizing hybrid coaster that I have ever seen. Its unique design of a single-tracked dueling coaster leaves room for some of the best rider experiences you can ever have on a roller coaster. You can duel your friends side by side as you're traversing over steep drops, inversions, and tons of ejector airtime, and that is a feeling that I will never forget. But that experience only comes when Magic Mountain is running the attraction as it was originally designed. That is, with at least 3 trains on the track, under the assumption that the train dispatching will be able to meet the previous train halfway up the lift hill. Unfortunately, this concept leaves room for error. The end result is more often than not a dueling coaster that never duels. And there is no worse feeling. With any standalone roller coaster, you can just focus on the layout, each individual element, and have fun with nothing else on your brain. This is not the case for Twisted Colossus, as the internal monologue you face leading up to your experience, and even during the experience is, will we duel? Oh no, they're taking too long. Come on guys, let's hurry this up. Is it gonna happen? Yes, they did it! Or, never mind. And then you finish out your experience in a less than satisfied state. This is the battle that every rider experiences with Twisted Colossus. And in this review, I'll be discussing the ins and outs of this attraction, my personal experiences with the coaster, and what could be done to improve the experience permanently. But let's start back with the original Colossus. This is an old classic wooden roller coaster that opened back in 1978. At the time it opened, it cost only $6 million to build. So I think it's safe to say they got good bang for their buck. I believe at the time it opened, it was the tallest roller coaster ever built, and it just became an icon for the amusement industry. We'd never seen a true racing coaster on this scale before, and it was met with rave reviews. It's one of the first roller coasters you see because it sits right next to the parking lot. It dominates the skyline, and with so much wood that was used to construct this ride, it just has a presence to it that you can't deny. The original Colossus became well known across the state of California and received quite a bit of attention back in 1983 when a deranged father held a security guard at gunpoint and forced him to ride the ride with his family because the park is closed, and the moose out front should have told him.
Sorry folks, park's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
Luckily, no one was hurt, but because of that incident, Colossus could be preserved throughout time and inspire thousands to make that trip out to Wally World to experience it for themselves. That is, until it closed for good in 2014. After 36 years of operation, Magic Mountain made the decision to shut down the attraction. It was losing popularity, it had become pretty rough over time, and they found a solution via Rocky Mountain Construction. This is an Idaho-based manufacturer that had become famous for converting old wooden roller coasters into a modern-day masterpiece. They first got their start with New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. Iron Rattler followed shortly thereafter in San Antonio, and because both of those attractions were already in the Six Flags chain, the company started looking towards other wooden roller coasters that they could revitalize. And the Colossus came to mind and opened as Twisted Colossus in 2015. It was a huge project and a landmark in Rocky Mountain construction history. The company's founder, Fred Grubb, got to experience the Colossus for himself back in the day. It was actually the first roller coaster he ever rode. And here they were in 2014 converting the ride into a hybrid. If that isn't poetic, then I don't know what is. You can hear more stories like this, and This Is How We Roll. This is a full feature-length documentary that we made about Rocky Mountain construction. It's available at vimeo.com/on-demand/thisishowwerollmovie. It dives into the history of RMC if you want to learn more about their company, as well as some of the other incredible projects that they undertook. The link to watch is in the description. Now, when Twisted Colossus opened, this was an RMC unlike anything that we'd ever seen before. Alongside famed ride designer Alan Schilke, RMC took this 2 separate track dueling coaster and converted it into one singular experience. Now, instead of having 2 loading areas, there's just one, but riders will experience both sides every single time. And this was hard for some people to wrap their head around at first. I still hear people say, hey, I want to ride blue side or I want to do green side, and they don't realize that when you ride Twisted Colossus, you do both. The layout design, to me, is a work of art, and I consider it a monument to creativity in this industry. I feel like RMC took the harder route by trying to combine them. Everyone originally assumed they would stay 2 separate tracks, but they made it work, and under the assumption that operators would be dispatching this in the way it was designed, it lent itself to a guest experience that truly was unparalleled. It was a statement piece of, this is the best dueling coaster that has ever been built, and you can only experience it when you come out to Six Flags Magic Mountain. And it drew the crowds, and that opening year was tremendously successful. Twisted Colossus became many guests' favorite ride in the park, which when you have more roller coasters than anywhere else in the world, that's quite the statement. And those operators that they originally hired were killing it. You would get a duel every single time with 3 or 4 trains running at once. They were fast. I first experienced Twisted Colossus in 2016, the year after it opened. I rode it 5 times, so that gives 10 potential dueling opportunities, 2 per side. I dueled 9 out of 10 times. Now, I'm not a Magic Mountain local, so I cannot confirm if it was always like that, but I rarely heard complaints. It seemed like they were really on top of things. And unfortunately, that just didn't last. After the initial hype wore off, Twisted Colossus started building up a reputation. It seemed like it became pretty split on whether or not you would actually get a duel. And at this point in time, most people who are familiar with the ride go in with the assumption that they are not going to duel. And if that isn't just tragic, because in reality, this is completely preventable. It's not like it's a universal situation where they said, hey, we can't duel these coasters anymore. And they are intentionally dispatching them to be out of sync. Here, the guests want it to duel, and many operators want it to duel, but sometimes there are obstacles in the way that make that incredibly challenging. And having now spent a lot of time at Magic Mountain, I've seen just about every side of the coin. I've seen operators who just aren't motivated to go fast, but I've also seen guests who are just moving at a snail's pace. And with Twisted Colossus, you have to be fast at all times. There is no downtime because the train you are trying to load needs to catch up to the train that was already sent. And that cycle never ends. So that adds an extra level of stress to these operators. And frankly, I have a lot of respect for the team members that they put here because there is no way that this is easy. You can be yelling over the mic saying, hey, gates are opening, you have 10 seconds to take your seat. Operators will begin checking your seatbelts in 30 seconds. And unfortunately, with some guests, they check their brains at the gate and they're like, wait, what did you say? And there's no sense of urgency. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2. Twisted Colossus has loose article bins on the other side of the station. In today's day and age, where lockers are becoming more and more common, it genuinely blows my mind that this ride does not have lockers out front. Normally, I'm against mandatory lockers at theme parks. If they're free, okay, that's not so bad. But if you have to pay to put your bag away every single time, that can get really annoying. But here, your ride experience literally could come down to that 5 to 15 seconds that it takes you to put your bag in a bin. I guarantee you, if Twisted Colossus were to develop a locker policy and see the removal of those bins on the other side of the platform, you will see a noticeable difference. And to me, that is worth it. If there's a potential solution that really is that simple, why have you not implemented it? And maybe now that we're in a post-merger world, we'll see a change. But clearly something has to be done because at the moment, this is a major problem. In timing out the POVs, from dispatch until the first brake run, the train is gone for 2 minutes and 5 seconds. In order to guarantee a duel, the previous train can't be more than halfway up the green lift hill by the time the next train hits the bunny hills. That way, it has plenty of time to catch up. So let's say in theory that means that the operators have approximately 2.5 minutes to send a train. This is very doable. Though I would say obstacle number 1 that they have to overcome is the fact that the way RMCs are operated is that you have to check the seatbelt first and then the lap bar second. There's also the issue that sometimes RMC restraints are not the most accommodating to riders of certain body types. So unfortunately, decently often we are seeing riders who aren't able to fit and have to step off. And naturally, that also increases the load time because you don't want to have to turn people away. So factor that in with a limited number of operators, bins on the platform, checking seatbelt first, lap bar second, some operators lacking urgency, guests lacking urgency, guests not paying attention, sometimes only 2 trains on the track. Here we are with a ride that does not duel as much as it should. So there's just a lot of factors at play here, and I think that's why Six Flags Magic Mountain decided to kind of right their mistakes when they built West Coast Racers. They already had a dueling coaster in the park, but they're like, let's build another one, but let's make sure this duels every time. And they fixed that problem by stopping the second train halfway through the ride, so when the crews are ready to dispatch, both trains roll forward at the same time. Stopping the train on the green lift hill on Twisted Colossus could be a little problematic, especially during the summer where it's extremely hot. You don't know how much time the crews need. Some riders could panic. Granted, you could put some sort of automated spiel saying, "Hang on, we're waiting for the next train," but that just opens up a big can of worms. So I understand why it is the way it is, but it doesn't mean that it isn't a big problem. But all that being said, let's discuss the actual layout of the attraction, because this is a very solid experience. So immediately after dispatching the station, you're going to take a left-handed turn and traverse over this pre-lift. This is so unbelievably wonky. It looks like a little kid just did some scribbles, and it is hilarious. It's so cool that it actually inspired an entire model from RMC called the Wild Moose. It's a smaller, kid-friendly attraction that the entire ride is just little moments like this. And that is so fun. You have a far distance to travel from the station to the base of the lift hill, and so I am glad that they made it interesting. As you start your climb, you'll rise up 121 feet in the air. This is actually 4 feet shorter than the original Colossus, which I found to be pretty interesting because most RMC coasters see an increase in height from the original. The main difference comes in the drop. The original Colossus had a 115-foot drop, so 10 feet shorter than the height. Twisted Colossus features a drop that is bigger than its height, 128 feet. But that's done without a tunnel, which is pretty impressive considering that it seems like the attraction is on relatively flat ground. But I guess for one reason or another, they were able to make it work. Both drops descend at an 80-degree angle, so near vertical. That's quite the increase from the original ramp that Colossus had, and where Colossus would just immediately rise up into this big turnaround, Twisted Colossus features 2 ejector bunny hops before you shoot up the other side. So immediately, with the drop, bunny hill, and rise up here, you're getting a ton of airtime. And I love what they did with this turnaround. They included your first real interactive moment, and that is the high five. Here, both trains are rotated the side to face the other. It feels like you could reach out and lock hands with passengers on the other side. In reality, that is not the case. You're just slightly out of reach, but it is a pretty cool feeling. And even if you don't duel, regardless, this high five kicks. On the green side, you whip pretty hard because the natural progression of elements would have you banking to the other side because you're making a left-handed turn. So here, they flip you in the opposite direction, hold you there for a second, and then flip you back in the original direction of travel. The blue side, on the other hand, can have a much more sustained wave turn. So while the drop and bunny hills will feel the same no matter which side you're on, the high five is the first time on Twisted Colossus where your experience will be different per side. Coming off of this turnaround, blue side will feature this large drop down to the ground and a little bunny hill that immediately follows. The green side incorporates a double down and also twists you as you make that descent, and that second down in particular really sends you up out of your seat. Following this, we have the Top Gun stall. This element is king. What an incredible design. On the green side, you're flipped upside down, hanging directly below the blue side as the riders there are experiencing an airtime hill. So you could be getting ejected, look straight up, and see passengers above you. And that is unbelievably cool, especially if you have a friend on the other train. As green side twists out from its inversion, blue side will then immediately enter its first inversion. This is a 0G roll, while green side has a twisted airtime pop, again just perfectly wrapping around each other. Both sides then enter a double up, and as a finale, blue side will do an outer bank and then turn into the second lift, thus becoming the green side. And the current green side will do a bank turn and an airtime pop into the brake run, concluding your experience. So there are quite a few standout moments here, but what really makes the ride work is that you do get to experience both halves. Frankly, if the ride ended just after the blue side and that was it, it would feel like a pretty underwhelming RMC. It would feel short. And the saving grace to the fact that you aren't guaranteed a duel is that regardless, the elements on Twisted Colossus are good. You're going to have a blast on them no matter what. When I first experienced Twisted Colossus, I loved it. It was my 200th coaster and it immediately shot up into my top 10. Unfortunately, though, it no longer places that high in my rankings. It has just slowly but steadily dropped over time as I have increasingly become more and more frustrated with how this ride is operated. Now, I'm not a local, but during several of my most recent visits, Twisted Colossus was on just 2 trains. And when you run this ride with only 2 trains, it is impossible to get a duel on both laps. It is possible to get a duel on one side, but when Twisted Colossus opened, it debuted with 4 trains. You will never, however, see them run 4 trains on this ride, as the 4th train is always being used for annual rebuilds. And frankly, if their operations are fast enough, they don't need to run 4 trains. You can get a double duel every time on 3. As soon as one train hits the brake run, the next one's being sent out. I doubt that 4 would actually increase their capacity, but during several of my most recent visits to Magic Mountain, they were only on 2. And in my opinion, regardless of crowds, you should never be operating Twisted Colossus with only 2 trains. That is not how the ride was designed or advertised. If in all your promotional imagery, Twisted Colossus is dueling, then that's what guests should experience. So, for a final score of Twisted Colossus, to me it is an 8 out of 10. Under the circumstances where it duels every time, it is a 10 out of 10. But unfortunately, in its current state, I just can't give it the score it rightfully deserves because I cannot get behind the way it is operated. It is no longer my favorite ride at Magic Mountain. I give that to X2. I still love Twisted Colossus for its uniqueness, but whenever I discuss this attraction with someone, the conversation always goes, I like it, but, and I wish that wasn't the case. But you can let me know down in the comments below. Do you agree with the points that I brought up? Has your experience on Twisted Colossus been different? And if so, let me know what you think. And of course, make sure to stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.